Hi, it's Tracy from Two Rocks Tarot. In this week's tips and trick, we'll be discussing the elements of the tarot cards. So the element of Wands is fire, and this is from the Tarot deck, which I believe is no longer available. But do take a look at Game Crafter, because I did see this deck available last year sometime, so it might still be there. We've got the suit of cups, which element is water. The suit of pentacles, element of earth. And then we have the suit of swords, which element is air. Now, in some tarot decks, they will swap that around. And one such deck is one that I own, is called the, Celtic Dragon Tarot. So the swords in this suit represents fire and not air, and wands represent air and not fire. So sometimes you may find that certain decks change things around. I do read with this deck using the element of fire to represent swords, because it just works for this deck. Air does not suit it at all. A lot of the images in this tarot deck of the swords are very fiery looking, and swords are forged in fire, so it makes sense to me. All other tarot decks I keep to the traditional meanings, but with this one I don't, because it just works. So do keep that in mind. If that works for you, do it. If it doesn't, then don't. Just change them to suit you. That's just, read tarot your way. Just read it your way. That is the most important thing that I want to get across in this series. That there is only right way to read the tarot is how you approach it. So there you go. So that is the elements of the actual tarot suite, or suit, I should say. The tarot deck. Oh, I tell you what, it's been one of those days today. But anyway, so how can you use this when it comes to a reading? So if you're doing a reading, let's just say you're doing a career reading and you're asking about your boss, and there are no cup cards in your spread. And you're looking at it, and so what this can tell you about the person is that she's very unemotional. It's like talking to a dead fish. You can't get any answers out of her. She never seems to have any animation, or he, could be a he too, of course, but you get my drift. So emotional wise, since it's not there emotionally, they're not approachable emotionally. So you might have to approach them from a more creative side. So if you get a lot of wands, you might have to think of creative ways to get to be able to talk to this person. If it's swords, you've got to think of intellectual ways to get in touch with this person. And if it's pentacles, then of course you're going to have to think of ways that are going to earn her or him more money to approach them. So that's just a very basic way of of using the elements in a deck. Because I'm a big tarot reader, that sort of I don't really pay attention to that, but I wanted to point that out because that does help a lot of people, particularly when you're new. Another way that you can do, if you do like to have a significator to represent the client that you're doing a reading for, is to keep that card in mind and shuffle the deck and keep turning them over until that card turns up, and then to take the card before their card and the card after that card, and that'll give you an idea of what's pressing the most. So the left will represent the past, so there's something on the past that is still affecting them now in the present, and the card on the right is more of the future and how they are dealing with it, and how or ways even to deal with it. So that's another way of doing that as well. You can also have a tarot deck that's separated into the 4 different elements, and also the one of the major arcana as well to represent spirit, and then using another deck, keeping whatever card it is in mind that you have chosen to represent your client. Just keep pulling the cards, putting one card in front of the wands, one in front of the cups, and so forth and so forth, until the card that represents the client appears before a pile. So if it's wands, it could be the creative side that's, that they need some advice in. If it's cup, it's emotional. If it's, swords, it's more of an intellectual thing. If it's pentacles, it could be a monetary thing that they're worried about. And then, of course, if it's the major arcana, it could be some type of spiritual aspect of their lives that are worried about. So say, for instance, it's still, using the Four of Wands for an example as a significator. Say, so actually, if it does, I was going to say, if it does land in front of the major arcana, make sure they're not in order, make sure they've been shuffled, all of them have been shuffled. And if it does land in front of the major arcana, turn over the top card and see what it is. So for instance, if it's the Empress, they might have real trouble nurturing themselves or nurturing another person in their life. They just don't, they're not feeling, there's something Empress-wise that's lacking in their life. So if it's the Emperor, there could be control. Maybe they're worried about control issues. If it's a Tower, they might have had a lot of change in their life and they're not coping very well. Try and see spiritually what that card would mean. So, make sure they're all shuffled. You can actually do that too. So if it landed in the Cups position, take the top card off and put it underneath and see what it is. Is it the Four of Cups? So say if you had the Four of Cups and the Four of Wands, one represents stability, the other one represents stagnation and being bored. So are they bored with their stability? Do they need to spice things up into their life? You see what I'm saying? And you can actually, once your card turns up, no matter what pile it turns into, take the top of each of the cards, and then you've got a whole spread there, and that'll tell you a lot about what's going on in your client's life. So that's just another little bit of a tip. This is really good for those of you like me who read online, because, when I do an online reading, I don't know what country they're from, whether they're male or female, because sometimes you just cannot tell by the name. And also, you can't, they might only just have one word like general. That's all they've got is general. So, you can do that, can help you hone in on what's going on in your client's life as well, because even if you don't know if they're male or female, if you just, you're thinking general, then think of a general card. So that's why I thought of the Four of Wands. It's kind of a general type of a card. You might have the Two of Wands. It doesn't really matter what you choose. It's just trying to give you a bit of an idea of what's going on in your client's life. So that's just some different ways of using the elements in tarot. And sometimes you might see, like say, for instance, you've got a lot of Wands and a lot of Cups. Well, that's probably telling you that the creativity is being dampened, because really Wands, fire and water don't mix, does it? Water puts out fire. And say if it's Swords and Pentacles, well, then intellect is, or the money side is ruling over the mental side, or vice versa. You see, you've got to really look to see what the cards are telling you, and go with the first thing that you think of. Go with the first thing that you think of as well. Don't just, overanalyze things. I think that's the most important thing when it comes to the tarot, is not to overanalyze what you're reading. It's supposed to be, when you look at the cards, sometimes, you do need to, like if you've done quite a deep spread, you might like to keep it out for a couple of days and look over it again, because you might get little words and things that will come up that you didn't notice before. Some type of an image in the tarot deck that you didn't notice will make itself notable to you. But basically, I know when I myself do a spread, I read it, and I shuffle it and I put it away, and I don't sort of think about it. Some things might come back a month or so later and I think, oh yeah, that's come to pass now. I just think when it comes to tarot, to have it flowing really nicely. So that's it for this week's tarot tips and tricks. I hope you've enjoyed it. And until next time, take care, and please press the like and subscribe button if you'd like to continue on with seeing what's on my channel. Until next time, this is Tracy.